Record. There we go. All right, we're good.
Okay, this is Jim Borman of Project Healing Waters videos. Today we're going to tie the sparkle Dunn. It's pretty easy fly to tie with the exception of the wing. You can see the wing forms a half moon, but it's kind of forward cocked a little bit and not too bushy. We're going to be using micro Zelon in amber this time. The Zelon is kind of hard to find. Blue Ribbon Flies has a good stock of it most of the time in a whole bunch of different colors. That's the only place I've really found it in any decent quantity. We're also going to be using Dunn deer hair. And I don't know how well you can see this. I can show it to you in a different patch. This is a fairly fine hair. This is a little bit longer than normal. Most of it's relatively shorter. But if you can see the various different individual hairs in this packet, you can see that there's very little under fur and that the hairs are actually kind of crinkled. That's how you know you have a good deer hair patch. So we're going to be using that today. We're going to be using a combination dubbing of hare's ear and Davey Wooten's SLF in olive brown. And I have a number of different colors of Zelon, but we're going to be using the amber today. I'll be using Ultra Thread, again, 70. So, shall we begin? Oh, and the hook. The hook is a TMC 100. That's probably the most standard dry fly hook in the entire market. So they're relatively easy to find, and I know the Shields has them. They did 2 weeks ago, let me put it that way. So we're going to begin with a little bit of a thread wrap about halfway back, and then again about halfway back to the hook. So a double thread wrap. This kind of tends to keep the deer hair from rolling around the hook. Now, if you get a 2 or 3 wrap thread base here. So we're going to go about roughly 1/4 of the way behind the eye. Now I've already pulled some deer hair and stacked it. Going to get it out of the stacker here real quick. We're using a chunk of deer hair about that thick and approximately 1 hook length back. So from there, we're going to go up to about right in here. We're going to hold that. We're going to wrap a couple of loose wraps around that. We want it to stay predominantly on the top of the hook, but I'm also going to go back one tiny little section farther back and tighten that down real good. And the whole thing kind of blossoms out, but then we're going to pull the deer hair up toward the top. And I pulled it too far back down the hook, so see where the hook eye is on this one? We're going to wrap a pretty good chunk around there, nice and tight. We're going to get our scissors in here. Might have to cut it a couple times. You know, I've tied 6 flies in the last hour and not a single thread break. No, I can't get it threaded. There we go. Easy way to repair a thread break is just to take the tag end that you just tied, wrap it around itself 2 or 3 times, and then back over the top of the loop. Get it fairly tight down there. Now we're going to wrap the thread back through the deer hair cut. This shouldn't be moving like that. There we go. Back through the deer hair clump that I just cut. And that kind of tends to anchor all the deer hair. So that it doesn't slip out. Some of these tag ends cut. There we go. Back through that a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to pull this deer hair back and we're going to make a couple of wraps in front. Kind of form a little bit of a thread dam in front. And that kind of keeps the deer hair from, there we go. See how easy that was? I'm just going to clean this up just a little bit. There we go. Now the next step, let's go back all the way to the hook bend. And back just a little bit, not far. Now we're going to take our Zelon, and it kind of looks like this. If you open up a Zelon packet, they actually come in little chunky strands. It's little bundled fibers that are all packed in together, but when you peel them out, they come out in little bunches like this. So we're going to take and we're going to tie that in as the tail. Back to the front, and we're going to pull that Zelon back and cut it off. Wow. Twice in one recording. It's got to be some sort of a record, huh? It must have been ready to break because I didn't pull it very hard. All right, we're going to go back to the bend again. Now the blend that I have, again, is at half Hare's Mask and half Davy Wooten polyester, kind of a nylonish dub. So I come up with something that looks like this. You don't want much, and you don't want a lot of body. You want just enough to just cover the thread and create a kind of a torpedo-like body. So that's kind of what we're looking for as far as the body goes, where the whitest part is actually going to be up around the base of the wing. By the way, this fly was tied by, actually originated by Craig Matthews as a dry fly and emerger. So a little bit of wax, just a little. And we make a noodle, threading noodle. And I use about half wax and half good old-fashioned spit on my fingers, and that seems to form that noodle really well. And when we get up here, we're going to add just a little bit. Now we're going to pull our hair back, and we're going to make a dubbing wrap. It's a relatively tight dubbing wrap, one or two of them in the front. Then we're going to add a little bit more dubbing. And we're going to run about 2 of those in the back. Fairly tight dubbing wraps, front and back. Then we come back to the front again. We tie it off. And we're almost done. With the wing, we want to kind of spread the wing out a little bit. So I'm just kind of pulling it down to the sides, just a little. Spreading it out kind of nice. The tail, Craig likes it about half body length. So probably about right in there. And then we're going to go in and kind of rough it up, scrunch it up until it makes that real nice shuck, trailing shuck. Play around with that wing just a little bit more. Should be a little bit forward facing. Nice consistency all the way around. And then we're going to go through and trim off anything that's fuzzy but it's not wing. If we have the dubbing too fuzzy, then it tends to override the wing. And we don't want that. We want that wing out there nice and predominant. Okay, and I don't know how well I'm gonna do this, but you can see we've got a real nice half moon shape in here. Nothing hanging too low. Nice even wing all the way around. Hope that's out of focus. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's the sparkle done. Did I stay within a half hour? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions about that?
So this, I'm guessing, is a dry fly then?
Dry fly or emerger, it can be either one of them.
Okay.
You could use a floatant in the body a little bit, and so you know it stays on the surface, or it could ride at the surface, or even a touch below the surface.
Okay. And then
And you can make it in any color too. I mean, anything that matches the hatch. So you can make it PMD, olive brown, brown, tan, gray, sulfur, whatever color you need to make that. Now this is a number 14, so we can see it better on the camera, but you can make that all the way down to 18, or maybe even a touch smaller if you needed to. For some of the smaller mayflies, it's a mayfly imitation.
okay. And then can you say the name of it one more time? I'm sorry, I gotta get this written down right.
To say what again?
The name of it?
Oh, this is a Sparkle Dunn.
Sparkle Dunn. That's it.
Sparkle Dunn. D-U-N-N.
There we go.
Yeah. A Dunn has something to do not with the color, but with the type of fly.
Okay.
The type of stage of a mayfly is called a Dunn. As near as I can tell.
All right.
Okay. The deer hair is really kind of important because you want this relatively thick without taking up a lot of space. If you can see that, I've got another one here that's, so you can see that as well. That's a half moon shape. Relatively a lot of fibers, but it's not really thick. It's relatively thin. And that's the way it should be. And if you use regular deer belly hair, you're not going to accomplish that. You have to get that that coastal deer, or what they call Comparadun. Comparadun hair, it's just a real fine natural hair. And since it is a coastal deer, it doesn't build up all of the underbody fur that normal deer hair has. So there's very, very little of it. And you can tell from an early season to late season, and an early season is better because early season you get that crinkly hair in there. Each of these hairs is kind of crinkly, and it holds thread better, and it doesn't have a huge buildup of under fur. It's just a much better hair. It's thinner, and you can pack more hair into there without building up the bulk. See if I made any other notes. Body is tapered. Tight dubbing wraps both in front of and behind the wing to help shape that wing and hold it in place better. That's about it, gents.
Any other questions before I stop the recording?
You know, the hardest part about this is the deer hair wing. And if at first you don't get it right, keep trying. Tie it on with the tips pointing forward over the eye. Tight down the base of it pretty good, but you don't want it going all the way back along the hook, because then that builds too heavy a body. You want it cut off pretty close, about where my fingernail is. So as long as it's in there, you could even add a half a drop of super glue or something in there to help hold those fibers better. You'd have to let it set up before you wrap.
All right. Let's stop the recording.